Hello! So this video is going to be another one of my non-fiction history book hauls. I've done a few of these on my channel, which I'll link up in the description bar and up there somewhere. I have done a few of these and they're always quite popular, so I thought I'd do another one for you. Now, all the books I'm going to show in today's video were kindly sent to me by a publishing company called Pen and Sword. They specialise in history and military, and they're just a great publishing house which I think deserves a little bit more credit, and if you're like me and you love history, then I think there'll be some books here for you. Now, all these books I was sent either because I requested them personally or because I was sent the press release and I thought it sounded really interesting, so that's why. So let's get straight into it, shall we? So the first book I received was Mary Antoinette's Confidant by Jerry Walton, The Rise and Fall of Princess de Lamballe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's this beautiful book here. Now, I was sent the press release of this and it sounded really interesting because it said it's great for anyone who's interested in the history of women, social history of women, but also Georgian period, and I love the Georgian period, so I was really intrigued to get this. And when I opened it up, the first paragraph just had me hooked, and I'm going to read you the first paragraph. On the 3rd of September 1792, still wearing her finest French silk with her curls arranged under her linen mob cap, she climbed onto her cot and onto a ledge so she could peer through a tiny rectangular window. The stone wall of her cell at La Force prison felt cold on her palms as she leaned against it, but she wasn't thinking about that when she looked outside. Below she saw a formidable iron gate, and the gate was thronged with people, some drunk, some yelling insults, some throwing rocks. From her vantage point she could see the crowd, dressed in tattered and threadbare clothes, which made them seem all the more menacing. Dun dun dun. So why is she in prison? Who is she? Don't know. I shamefully know very little about Marie Antoinette, but she always seems such a fascinating woman, and I'm looking forward to picking this up and giving it a good read. Next is another one that I think I was sent the press release for, but as soon as I saw it I was like, yes please, and it is In Bed with the Georgians, Sex, Scandal and Satire in the 18th Century by Mike Rendell. This book I wanted because it reminded me when I was at university. I did two modules and they're both called History of Sexuality. One was a history module and one was a sociology module, and I loved those modules. They were my best and favourite modules at university. I thought they were so good, so incredible, and there was a text which you had to read for that module, and I remember that book so vividly because I actually ended up reading the book cover to cover, despite the fact that I only needed to read certain chapters. I absolutely loved it and found it so fascinating, and this book reminded me of that. It's full of kind of funny but naughty pictures because I have the attitude of like a 3-year-old when it comes to this sort of stuff, but it just sounded brilliant and I can't wait to read it. Next is a cute little book, and it is A History of Courtship, 800 Years of Seduction Techniques by Tanya O'Donnell. Doesn't this book look beautiful? It's just a sweet little book about the history of courtship and romance. It's got some poetry in there, some pictures. Ooh, there was Elizabeth I there. There she is. Virgin Queen. I'm very looking forward to reading this. I think it'll be one of those books that I tend to read in one sitting because it's just over 100 pages. It's not very long at all. And just looking forward to learning a bit more about the history of seduction and romance. Then I requested Life in the Georgian Court by Catherine Curzon. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your surname. This book, it's George III on the back. Huh. George III, Charlotte and some of their 15 children. She was a busy woman. I requested this because I love the Georgian period. It's a period which I'm really getting into at the moment, and I just wanted to learn a bit more, and this book sounds fascinating because it takes things like marriage and death and scandal all across, well, I'm not sure if it's all across the world or all across Europe, but talks about certain stories to do with such things. So it'll talk about like George III, and then it'll talk about Marie Antoinette, all about life in the Georgian court. So it sounds really interesting. Next, I also requested Corsets and Codpieces, A Social History of Outrageous Fashion by Karen Bowman. I'm currently doing all my research for my series of videos that I'm going to be doing on where you want to start reading about vintage fashion and antique costumes and things like that. And if I was to request every single book that I own, I would be there all day. However, there are some little things that I think I'm missing, and this book may possibly fill the gap if it's a good one. I'm hoping it is, and it does look to be quite interesting. It goes right back in history, all the way up to the 1940s, talking about kind of unusual fashions. It's not necessarily about underwear, it's just about unusual fashions, talking about codpieces and talk about ruffs and, you know, unusual fashions that we don't wear now. But it sounds interesting. It's not too long a book either, and I think it'll be quite a quick little read. It's got lots of pictures in it as well, like this. It's just a nice book, really. Loads of pictures. Ooh, look at her dress. Huh. Yeah, great. Another one of the fashion ones I requested was Edwardian Ladies Hat Fashions. Where Did You Get That Hat by Peter Kimpton. This is a lovely book, isn't it? And I got this because, again, doing my starting reading about vintage fashion type research, and when I saw this I was like, ooh, I think that'll be quite an interesting read. There's lots of pictures in this, as well as photographs of real women. Edwardian ladies really like to wear hats. If you look at old pictures and postcards of Edwardian women, lots of them are wearing quite bizarre hats, and I thought this would be quite an interesting one to pick up because it's a beautiful kind of coffee table book. So we'll see how this goes. And finally, last but certainly not least, a book on Amblin. This is Amblin and London by, is it Lisa or Liza Chapman? Oh, I asked for this despite the fact that it actually wasn't released yet, and they very kindly sent me a copy. Oh, this book looks magnificent. It's so up my street. I think the thing about Anne Boleyn is lots of people love Anne Boleyn, and people constantly want books about Anne Boleyn, but they want something new, and this provides something new. It says, this book looks at the evidence both for the effect of London and its people had on the course of Anne Boleyn's life and death, and the effects she had and continues to have on them. So it's basically a book about Anne Boleyn and her life in London. Many of her kind of rise and fall happened in London, and I think it's all about that and the influence that she still has on Londoners today. So that sounds really good. So there we go, that is my book haul. I hope you enjoyed it. All the books that I've mentioned will be in the description bar below if you want to go and get your hands on any of them. Let me know also if you like the sound of any of these in particular and you want a full review of them, because I can always do that for you. So take care everybody, and I shall see you soon for the next video. Bye!